Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17 and today I'm covering something a little bit different. Today I'm covering Company of Heroes 3 and what it's going to be featuring during its launch. Relic made a post stating all the content that's going to be released upon when it will February 23rd hits us, and what content Company of Heroes 3 will not have. Some of you may be very excited because you get more information. Again, that's me. Some of you may be frustrated because maybe a lack of content or lack of what you may want. I could definitely see some aspect, but let's get to the positives and what it does feature and kind of break that down. Note, I'm going to be using Company of Heroes 2 and other RTSs as a reference. If you probably want to use another content creator like maybe AE helping Hans, or any other person that kind of helps break down a lot of the news around Company of Heroes and relate to Co1, that's probably where I would recommend. As well, just as a reminder, if you are interested in Company of Heroes 3 and you do want to pre-order it and you do want to support the channel, the link is down below. But again, I will try to give my honest opinion throughout this entire thing, so I will try to be clear and bring up information, like I said, comparing other games, etc., to kind of compare and show, like, maybe it's like, oh, this amazing thing, maybe not so amazing, or, you know, this may look lacking, but actually it's pretty substantial. So let's get to the single player content, because I feel like that's what a lot of people, well, especially will jump into first. How's the campaign? Well, there's actually two, the Italian and the North African. They call it a dynamic Italian campaign, but essentially it's like a total war map where once you gain these engagements with other mobile companies that the Germans will be deploying to counteract the Americans and the Brits, though you will also be helping out the Italian partisans. How much that's going to go, or if there's going to be like special Italian units, I don't know. Here's hoping. But one thing is, again, you're going to be using naval invasions, paradrops, stuff like that, and you will get to customize his attack. Again, this is what was in the pre-alpha, right? Where the North African operation, that's going to be its campaign where it's going to be like a linear campaign, right? It's going to be your standard Company of Heroes mission variety like Company of Heroes 1 and Company of Heroes 2. Where I guess Company of Heroes, the Italian campaign, is like the next step for the Ardennes campaign for the DLC. Again, just quick refresh. So we have that stuff. We've already talked about that a lot. Skirmish versus AI. It's funny they put this here, and a lot of people will be like, oh, come on, please. But there's so many people that play this game versing AI. So that's it may seem trivial, but to a lot of people, that's a huge thing to make sure that they can actually have a multiplayer match versing AI. And again, continuing on to multiplayer, right? We have 4 factions. We have the US, the Wehrmacht, the British, and the Afrika Korps. In previous Company of Heroes, we had essentially one campaign, right? So one of these two. But in Company of Heroes, but of course for Company of Heroes 2, you also had Theater of War, which had a variety of missions, some co-op, some single player, and then solo versus AI, etc. So you had that stuff you can kind of do. So that's kind of, I kind of lump that in, and I'll get to maybe a little more specifics after the single player. In multiplayer, to get into specifics, the fact that it's 1v1 through 4v4, nice. I think that's going to be solid, and 4 factions should alleviate, because I know a lot of people got not necessarily bored, but maybe tired of the austere Soviet consistent battles, right? It does get a little bit frustrating. And again, there's a number of RTS games I can think of off the top of my head, like Halo Wars, like, again, World of Conflict, games I grew up playing, where it's like, okay, you got the, you did have NATO, I will say, but it's not like you could pick, unless a World of Conflict I'm mistaken, but I think it was always NATO and the Soviets, or America and the Soviets. I don't believe there was a situation where you could pick NATO and the US versus the Soviets. But anyway, in Company of Heroes 2, it took 2 DLCs to get 3 additional factions. In this, they're already arriving. The catch, and I feel like this is where a lot of people will be like, wait a second, is, again, you have those 3 factions, right? And they say over 120 playable units, which is great. I'm not going to deny that's a good variety of forces. But the battle groups, there's only 3. For the Americans, you have the Airborne, Armored, Special Operations. We've gotten a lot of this stuff through the pre-alpha, right? We got a lot of this stuff through the multiplayer pre-alpha they did, right? Because for the Americans and the Wehrmacht at the time, oh god, was it shoot. Was it the I think it was the Americans. It was definitely, I know it was the Wehrmacht for sure, because you had the Kettenkrad. Yeah, no, that was. Anyway, point is, I believe there are only 2 battle groups you can play with each, right? In this situation, it's going to be different. Yeah, because I think it was Luftwaffe and Breakthrough for the Wehrmacht you got to play in the pre-alpha. But in this case, they're adding a third one, mechanized. Now, you could say, well, Greyshot... sorry. For the British, you have Indian Artillery, Armored Support, and Air and Sea battle groups. Again, it's going to be interesting to see why Air and Sea is lumped together. I feel like you maybe want to separate that, but maybe, again, they have an interesting combination there for support. The Africa Corps, that's where I'm interested, because not only do you got the basic armored thrust, where the Wehrmacht is more defensive, Africa Corps is more offensive. I love the fact it's offensive with the Italians. That's going to be funny. And it's Italian combined arms. So that means we get Italian artillery, Italian, what is it called? Armor. Are we going to get, that stuff? That would be cool. And then do we get Italian infantry and then maybe some Italian air support? I know a lot of people want their own Italian faction, but I like the fact they're infusing the Africa Corps with the Italians so that way people don't feel like they're missing out. Kind of like why I like the British forces, including British Raj, or, more Indian divisions or Indian forces. Because at least that way I could see them being like, okay, for DLC, we're introducing the Australians or the New Zealands or something like that. For the Wehrmacht, you could do different battle groups depending on, depending on the theater, whatever they want to add. Or maybe a new thing they want to add, like heavy ordnance. Like they could send elephants or something. I don't know. But point is, they have the room and maneuverability to add what they need to. And again, they're not limiting it necessarily to a specific country. You can bring in support units. One of the things I always found that Code 2 was maybe lacking, because I remember way back, and I've said this multiple times, but I remember back when they mentioned the Finnish and how there could be like a winter war aspect for like theater of war, or there might be like a campaign aspect. And I think this was at E3, because again, I always loved watching E3 growing up. So again, all those interview stuff like that, I again had my popcorn, enjoyed it, but the thing was, I was like, I always wanted the Romanians or the Finnish or all these other countries to maybe have support units, maybe in with the main faction, or have a faction themselves. But that didn't happen in Code 2. You just got the Brits, the Americans, and nothing wrong with that. I just want other countries that are maybe less popular or maybe are less known. Again, with the British, I could easily see them, if they want to infuse Polish forces or anything like that. Again, just multiple different countries you could have an influx for. Or maybe if you wanted to, like Foreign Legion, maybe Free French, etc. But that gives them the opportunity. Anyway, beside that point, we got 3. Sorry, I'm just spitballing. Point is, even though 3 may sound limited, remember that each of these battle groups are 10 choices, right? Split between 2 branches that you can pick and choose what you want. So, based on Company of Heroes 2, that's essentially 1 commander for half a battle group, or 2 commanders for 1 battle group, which means there are 6 commanders equivalent for each of the 3 factions. That's pretty solid in my book, because again, if we kind of calculate that up for Code 2, maybe it's a little more limited. I think Code 2 had a couple more commanders for the Soviets, but again, if they're solid commanders, I don't mind, because again, even though the Soviets and the Wehrmacht may have had a few more commanders than that, to be completely honest, again, some of those were more picked, some of those commanders were very much left to the wayside. And again, it took multiple iterations, patches to kind of bring some commanders up and make them useful. So, if they're solid, that's the thing that's going to be, is quality. Same thing with these multiplayer maps. 14 may not sound like a lot, but as someone who constantly plays Red Ball, White Ball, Port of Hamburg, trying to go through, Lian Forest and Lanzerith Ambush, right? Those are like my 5 favorites that I can name off the top of my head. Again, not discounting Sittard Summer or some others, but if you give me a good assortment of solid multiplayer maps, that's going to be way better than giving me Face Off at Rostov, or I don't know. There's a handful of bad ones I'm like, eh. Even like C-17 I'm like okay with. Steps I think is a classic. I don't think it's my favorite, but I enjoy. But as long as you give me solid maps, I think everyone's going to be fine with this. And remember, some of these maps may be 1v1, 2v2. Some of them may be 3v3, 4v4. Please give better 3v3 maps. Because, yeah, 3v3 got a little shafted. But anyway, Again, they'll have co-op versus AI, custom games, which again you can customize to be shorter, longer, etc. But the big thing is, let's say maybe again some of the maps don't work out. Maybe it's like, okay, this isn't necessarily working at playing auto match, right? The fact that they're bringing mod support immediately upon release, I think is a really good plus. Again, a comparison for me would be something like XCOM 2, where when I played with a bunch of people who played XCOM 2 at the time, they immediately downloaded the mod supported stuff because it's like good quality, and as well it's like immediately fits into the game. So it's because they supported it, they well optimized it, and they made sure that creators could easily do what they need to add those in XCOM's case, characters or scenarios to the person's desire. In this case, you can do tuning packs, game modes, maps, and scenarios. I just think of like people like Opulent Omega that made the Iron Hearts campaign in multiplayer, and hopefully this is a lot easier for him to go through and make that stuff, or other people out there. Like, for example, I know Rifle and Johnny and a few other people that work with Advanced Powers they do oh god, what is it called? Spearhead. I didn't know it was another popular one. Or the Zombies mod that I've played recently. Stuff like that will help make things they won't be so repetitive, and it allows for more creativity, especially when it's easier for people to make that stuff, right? So I think that's a huge plus, especially if you make it easy to do and it's available at launch, right? That's, I think, a very good positive. Where Code 2, for those who don't know, definitely had that issue where it wasn't mod supported, and a lot of people, suffice to say, had a rough time just trying to work with the game. So hopefully this is a better system and works better for the, like I said, modders. Features and systems. Over 40 main missions. Now, even though they may say, oh my god, Greyshot, that's a lot. Again, that's way more than Company of Heroes 2. Company of Heroes 2 had, I think, 14 main missions. So it's like, man, we're getting, what, almost 3 times the missions. No. But before people start saying that, and to be fair, I guess plus 8 single player. So let's say 48. So again, you could even escalate that further. Before you do that, I do want to point out that Company of Heroes 2 released with the campaign, and it released with Operation Barbarossa, which was in Theater of War. A lot of those were scenarios designed to play by yourself or with a friend, oh god, was Brody 2-player or 3-player? I think it was 2. But point is, it was meant to play with a certain selection of people, and just and then you can go through those scenarios of different events during World War II, during the invasion of Russia, right? Or Soviet Union. That, I think, was a grand total of, I think, 18 missions. So 18, 14, 32. Again, still more here, but just to suffice to say, it's not a super dramatic increase, but it is an increase. I just do want to give a fair comparison's sake, right? Again, you got the tactical pause that's been in all the trailers. Tac map. Again, key remapping, and again, camera control. Again, I do find the fact that they are going to allow you to customize fantastic, right? That's solid plus, because again, a lot of people do not like the standard keyboard layout and would want to improve or change things around to make things better for them. So glad that they have it. Updated social system, seamlessly create a party, add friends, report a player. My god, it's better than emailing Relic being like, hey, this guy literally used the N-word 15 times. Can you please deal with this person? Thank you. The fact it'll be baked in the game, fantastic. And again, that's not saying that Code 2 was, it should have, I should have had it. But it was, again, a game that I understand why maybe certain things about Code 2 wasn't seamless. Again, just look at the development history for Code 2. One of those things where, again, I'm just surprised it got released because of what, remember, it was THQ that went bankrupt. So they got bought by Sega. So I'm just glad they got to release Company of Heroes 2. But yeah, no, I'm glad that's in there. We already talked about destructible environments, tank riding, towing, which does include 17-pounder. I think we've seen that, but or I'm just forgetting. But hey, that's cool. It's in there. Breaching, again, we've seen that. through all the trailers. Side armor, verticality, again, Italian hills, so yep, makes sense. Enhanced recon, traversal trenches. Again, you'll have this pre-order bonus, right? So, hey, I'm not the biggest cosmetic guy, but it will be awesome to have that. Now, here's the thing where I saw a little bit of mixed support. It is fantastic, right, that you're going to have text in 12 languages, where Company of Heroes 2 had 8. So it is more, and that's solid. But it is mainly English language support. There is no Russian version or German version, or, suffice to say other languages. Actually, do they even have Russian? I know they had issues with Russia upon the release because Russia didn't take too kindly to how they're portrayed. Man, Russia being portrayed in a bad light. Oh man, never. But let's see. We got the Brazilian, Czech, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Spanish, and Turkish. But again, it is English language with that text support. I'm not a person behind the scenes. I don't know what goes into putting that in. I do know Code 2 did have some language packs for other languages, of course. I wish maybe they could add additional languages so people would be fine. So that's a little bit. I could definitely see some people being disappointed, but I do find at least one positive being they do have a lot of different languages in other versions in text form. All right, post-launch content. This is what they will be adding later, but it will not be available now. The store. Oh my God. Again, we have a game company that's like, you know what? Let's not have the in-game store out immediately. Let's give it some time so people enjoy the game, and then they can buy cosmetics. Yeah, so players can unlock store items in 2 ways, with either a paid currency, war bonds, or earned currency, merit, which is gained through challenges. Which again, challenges new system, test your skills challenge. We use new tactics, strategies, provide fun goals, and accomplishments in Code 3. And again, this is someone who's played a lot of Halo. Is challenges going to be that system where it's like, kill 3 Shermans and you get 200 merit? That's something. It's like, okay. I think what they need to do is make sure that it's stuff that's fun to do, not something that's like either super difficult or like steal an enemy tiger or something like that, where it's just very hard to do unless you cheese it. But that's going to be the balance, and I'm sure they'll work things out. But as long as they make it fun and interesting, I'm for it. Maybe some of the challenges, again, if I just spitballing, could be take Monte Casino in 10 turns or less. Something like that, where it provides some skill, but it could be a fun, interesting challenge to do. Kind of like the Hearts of Iron achievements. Again, not a huge achievement hunter now. I used to when I was on Xbox and such, but that's a way you could do it. Is just make it so that way it's something where it's not frustrating versus maybe other players, but something you could do maybe in single player, right? I think a lot of people would be fine with at least some challenges in that, as well as multiplayer. Ranked seasons, again, this will be something that a lot of the MLG guys would play. But again, I understand why, because they need to make sure the game is stable and balanced, because who knows, we could have Pathfinder equivalent where they're just the most overpowered thing imaginable, or Fallschirmjäger, or the British Bombers, or the Sturm Tiger, or insert other, the British fortifications. Insert thing that got released for Company for Heroes that turned out to be underpowered or overpowered that need adjusted, right? So I get them wanting to fix it for the first time period, first little bit, and then officially release it. Now, again, the question is, how long is it going to be for this? Is it going to be, within a month, right? Or 2 months, 3 months? Or is this going to be like Halo Infinite, where it's like, okay, we're like a year and we finally got Forge. So, like, how long is going to be the question for a lot of this stuff, right? I feel like they're probably going to prioritize the store, again, because they want to make money. That's fine. They should be allowed to make a secondary profit if the game is adequate, right? Especially if it's only cosmetics, as long as it's not pay to win stuff. And it seems like with everything else, right, with custom games, multiplayer, single player, they've added the equivalent, maybe slightly less with commanders, but again, if they have 4 factions, it's more units, so that's more variety, which I'm fine with. So overall, it seems like they are adding more stuff to Company of Heroes, and with players like, for example, again, AE and Tightrope and others making videos and stuff about Company of Heroes 3, about how to improve it, what to do in certain aspects of how they would improve it, or what could be done. Again, solid stuff. And they've been open to hearing stuff. So hopefully if the community wants a feature sooner, maybe they can change some things. Now, this entire time, you've not heard me talk about replays. And as, you know, the guy who mainly casts Company of Heroes 2 replays from my fans and from the people who submitted in, right? And to be fair, I tried to cast a variety from the top tier players to mid-tier players to the low-tier players on the floor. But even they should have a time in the sun now and again. And that's where we get into this. So, replays in observer mode will be added at a later point. Replays are critical part of reviewing and sharing matches while also supporting other forms of content creation. However, we know that prioritizing replays for launch would have risked the core game, or it would have meant releasing this feature in incomplete state. We have made the decision to continue working on the 1.0 version of replays and to release it after launch. The first version will have parity with Code 2 replay functionality, and we will continue working to improve it based on your feedback. Okay, so here's my thought. As someone who is directly impacted by this feature not being here, right? This may be a shock, but I'm okay with it being slightly delayed. Before people are like, oh my god, Greyshot's a shill. No. I actually have a reasonable explanation. The reason why I don't, even though Age of Empires 4 has an amazing replay system, I love that thing where I can just easily go to a player and pull that replay. It's incredible. The reason, right, that I personally don't cover Age of Empires 4 is because I need to master the game better before I can commentate on it, right? When I started off YouTube and started doing Code 2, I was building my channel, I was fine, but I do want to make sure I am adequate at covering games and strategies and units, etc. So, I'm probably going to take the first month to play the campaign and play multiplayer, right? Now, upon doing that, you know, and getting used to the game, I would say a month, maybe 2. That's when I really want replays, because then the community knows what they're doing. The community's solid at the game, and I can cover some amazing stuff, right? That's what I want. Now, again, if it's longer, like I personally would want a month, but if it's longer than even my most extreme would be 2 months, then it's where I personally start having issues, especially if observer mode's not in, because then it's not just me, right? Then it's the guys who's doing organizations like the Master League, trying to make sure that they can cover the top tier games of the league, because they will not be able to cover that stuff if there's no observer mode. They can't watch it live, right? And on the flip side, they can't then check out the game later with replays, because replays would not be functional. So yeah, that's going to delay tournaments and other things like that, which helps bring a different audience to Company of Heroes 3 in this case. Just like Company of Heroes 2, you had all sorts of tournaments, right? You had Ovadi doing his tournament. You had Skippy doing his tournament. Again, some featuring the top players, some featuring mid-tier players. But the point is, it brings in an audience, right, that enjoys watching the game or may try their game for the first time, especially with replays. Replays are not just covering the best of the best. It's about showing off a strategy or a comeback story or something like that really helps bring people in. So it's free marketing for Relic, and I'm sure they know that, and I'm sure they realize that. So, which is why that, yes, I would rather have it out day one, but for me personally, I'm okay with it being slightly delayed, because I know I need to get better at covering the games in the first place, which, to be fair, it's like, okay, even if replays are not available for a month, I'll master the game, quote unquote master, aka not try to horrifically fail, and then move on. So, yeah, and also they'll be releasing multiplayer maps, which is awesome. They apparently introduced them on a regular basis, so that's really nice. Again, I did some like looking back on Company of Heroes 2, and they did the same thing with releasing like, oh god, I think it was like Rostov. I think they added Rostov for free, and there was a map called Kharkov. I think those are the two that, like, here's free maps. Again, free stuff, fantastic, especially if they do it enough, do it at a solid enough clip, and if they need help, I'm sure the community, especially the mod crew, they're like, don't like, again, the mod teams, like, again, Opulent Omega blew me away by adding single player scenarios and multiplayer scenarios in multiplayer maps. I don't even know how he got that to function, but it's awesome. Anyway, if those modders, right, are able to make a supreme multiplayer map that is like, guys, this is like top tier quality. There's so, like, again, it's perfectly balanced. It has very low performance issues. Maybe we should bring that map into the community. Again, there are some maps like Montargis region that are better left forgotten, but other maps, like, you know what? I'll even put out there, Sittard Summer. I'm glad it was put into the multiplayer auto match queue, for at least for a time, even if it would lag the game and it turned into a bit of a cluster. But it was still fun. It was still very fun. And the fact that maybe they could continue that with including it, that way you don't have a scenario like, again, I'm not trying to push down Halo Infinite. They're doing great stuff with Forge, but there was a long period of time where they were lacking content. It would have really helped. Again, another content creator, Blintz, kind of mentioned this quite a bit, where if they would have let the community make stuff, right, and slowly release it, especially because they had Forge done so much sooner, if they would have the community just be able to release that stuff, it probably would have been better. But I digress. All right, game modes. Again, they're going to be adding game modes like Tank Royal, Last Stand. KOTU didn't really have game modes, right? So that's interesting. Again, I'm trying to think of any situation, but there wasn't really any time in KOTU's history where they're like, here's the game mode. That didn't happen. So again, that's positive if they're saying that. And then we have an expansion, which our first expansion will include new additions to the KO3 single player. So again, this expansion's not just here's a faction, right? It's going to be something that is going to be a new campaign of some sort. I have my own thoughts on what's going to be, but I do not think that's out of the ordinary. Plenty of games had expansions within close to its release. You had World on Conflict, Soviet Assault, you had Halo Wars. I'm sorry, not Halo Wars. Halo Wars had a bunch of map packs and stuff like that. Halo Wars 2 had the The Awakening? I want to say it was essentially them adding the Flood, right? So, with the, I forget the name of them. The Banished. The Banished versus the Flood. That's what it was. And they also added like a bunch of like mini campaigns with like Swordbreaker, I think was the name of it, with ODSTs and a few other stuff, right? So, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea for them to have them to announce an expansion this early. I think it's them just planning ahead. But I'm excited for it. I mean, again, I'm curious to see that they already have it in the works, so that's cool. And again, I might make a video in the future of like what I would like to see in a Company of Heroes 3 expansion, and kind of give like a chance. But anyway, let's get to what some of these people had to say. Let's see, James Jamazo, thank you very much. Let's see, there's a lot of content on day one. I'm looking forward to post-launch features. Let's see. I hope they add audio support will be expanded sometime in the launch, include more languages like German, French, Italian. I do too. I think that would be fantastic if they would add that. Again, if the voice acting is so amazingly good as the English version that it's like, yes, that's the definitive version, great. But I feel like everything that isn't live action, you could do that. But again, I don't know. But again, I hope they do. All right, let's see. Thank you for the Turkish language support. I guess I'm glad that at least that's there for text. So no German language. Again, I could definitely see that. No ranking, observer mode, or replays at launch has me very worried. Everything else sounds great. But these are crucial for competitive multiplayer. Again, I feel like that's going to be something that a lot of people say. And yeah, that is 100% crucial. That definitely, again, is a fair point. Multiplayer is my jam, and I'll hold off from buying until the experience on the whole is a more tolerable state. Yeah, you know, it's not like there's a game that just released that was like, whoops, well, someone didn't check the files right, so we have the worst stuttering you've ever seen in your life. Was it a Callisto Protocol? Man, that game, unfortunately. I mean, to be fair, it's not the best game of the year. Even without that, like, it has flaws, but Ace has been playing a lot, so he really enjoys it. He just found the performance. He had to literally mod the game himself to get it working. but they patched it, so apparently it's relatively speaking fine for the most part. Sorry, folks, no German dubbing means no buy for me until there's patch. The Schwarzenegger-esque voiceover is, I mean, that's fair. If they're taking a lot from Total War, maybe let's not bring over the Total War, especially the Shogun 2 voice acting. Like, oh god. Hopefully it's solid voice acting. So apparently German language is a big thing. Hope you can launch basic functions such as line reconnection, observer. That is a good point. Did they mention about reconnecting the matches? I don't believe they did. No, that's nothing. I'm actually kind of curious about that. If you could reconnect if you drop out of a match. Even if the AI kills all your units, maybe you could get in. All right. Let's see. What else have you guys said? Replay server not being launched, the big issue, and is something that should be there. Not for just content creators and veterans. Thank you. Thank you, Imperial Dane, for speaking out to the small content creators. But, man, guys, this Imperial Dane guy, maybe you should go check him out. I don't know. But for new players who wish to improve, yeah, pretty much everything I said. Again, I don't mind it not being there initially, especially if they want to make sure everything's good. But let's see. Good news, I would say, in terms of replay server mode, I think both should have the same interface while watching the game. I suggest taking some notes and replay observer. Well, yeah, they could just go back to. Well, I would like to see added replay observer mode compared to Code 2. As you mentioned, Code 3's first replay system be similar. Be able to being able to rewind, I think, would be good. Being able to place yourself whenever time would be good, and a better, cleaner UI. Yeah, they can always make improvements. I'm not going to deny that. If there's an improvement I'm forgetting, that would be solid. But yeah, the big thing, a learning page, just like in Age of Empires 4, I find it very useful because it shows the advantage of each faction. Yeah, I actually kind of like the more information they can provide on tutorials and stuff, the better off the community is going to be, especially if people jumping on in, because some people may have no idea what the bonuses are, right? So that's a solid thing. I hope to God it's not 2 years. I really hope not. If it's a month, if it's a couple months, worst case, fine, but please don't be longer than that. That's what I hope for, right? Out of everything here, up top, put in your store, but then replays, please. I'm happy for hotkeys. I'm happy for the hotkeys, but I'll be satisfied if I don't have to need to use the auto hotkey. It doesn't need to be fully grammable, but if they mimic a Age of Empires 4 spring patch is enough. Okay, cool. Let's see. Very nice content. I hope the rank system. Awesome. Looking forward to the game. Orange Pest, man. This Orange Pest going places. All right. Sounds a newcomer. Great way to care about the core multiplayer audience by crippling people of the best way to learn the game, replays, and make it incredibly hard for multiple content creators and tournaments to even be viable. As someone who plays in those tournaments consistently, I understand why Orange Pest is pissed. But as a bunch of people just learning the game, I see why. Again, I'll reiterate, in the first month or brief period of time when you're playing the game, you want to get used to it, and then you can start doing replays, stuff like that. That's fine. I'm totally okay with that, right? But hey, again, I'm not saying you should. For me personally, it should have been there, but it's one of those aspects that, again, I want to make sure, for me personally, I'm good at the game. I know the mechanics. I know everything's balanced, etc. I know what's going on in strategy that are being played by all the competitive guys down to the noobs, right? I want to make sure I have that. So it will take me time to make sure I learn that stuff. So a lot of gameplay for the first month is going to be me doing campaign and then me doing weird strats or other things like that. So, all right. And that's it for the comments. So thank you to all the comments that I covered. And hey, thank you. If you have comments, leave it down below. But hey, what do you guys think? Maybe I'm wrong about maybe a lot of these comments. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, overall, I think single player, multiplayer, the modding scene, everything in this game looks better than the previous iteration of Company of Heroes. But again, with replays and observer mode being delayed, that could absolutely be a factor, especially for me. But again, let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. This has been Greyshot17. I'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and before y'all go, let me give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Joey G240, Milam, BigChuche, Aphyria, Ace, PyroShark, Tony B95, epic pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support and helping me grow my channel and support my channel and everything I do. Thank you, and to the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.